on like a pink sweater and like going to a dance with Ned, and then she's like getting hit over the head with a candlestick and tied to a chair. So how do we like bring both of those things together? And in talking to Noga, we all really gravitated towards our favorite Nancy Drew stories were the ones that had supernatural elements.
Okay.
Like pulling that out.
All right, so what was your first introduction to Nancy Drew, the three of you? Like, and by the way, male executive producers.
Well, for me, it was the Scholastic Book Fair, like paperbacks, you know? Yes! And I would save up money, and then I would pick the one, and I would like smell it, and I would take it home and hide out somewhere and pretend that I was Nancy Drew.
Melinda?
Well, I had a little white bookshelf in my little bedroom in Bangor, Maine, and among the books there were the Nancy Drew books, but it was one of those things that Maine is really boring and it's really quiet, and I felt terribly isolated and self-conscious because I wasn't white, no offense, you know? And I was hiding in my room reading The Lord of the Rings over and over and over again because in those books, if you were different, it was cool, and you brought something to the party, your uniqueness made you worthwhile. So I really loved any kind of fiction that had somebody who wasn't quite on the inside of things being included, and I really think Nancy Drew speaks to that for everybody.
And to think, like, she was created 90 years ago. And, like, 90 years ago, most young girls weren't even allowed to leave the house unattended, and she's running around like a convertible. What are you doing to kind of bring her into 2020, 2019? And what are you kind of keeping as far as, like, those classic pieces about her?
I mean, I think if 90 years ago, there were stories about a girl who wanted to go run around and do whatever she wanted to do. Like, girls have always wanted to go run around and do whatever they wanted to do. So I think that's a universal appeal. But as far as how to bring her into nowadays, I think it's showing that Nancy Drew isn't perfect in the year 2019. You know, she was always very prim. She did everything right in the early books. But now she's complicated, you know? She has tragedy. She's lost things. She has complicated relationships with her family and her friends.
Yeah, she makes a lot of mistakes, which I think is relatable, and I think that her vulnerability is really the bridge to the connection she finds in this unlikely group of friends and allies who then become a team, and it's another important thing about our show, where it's very much an ensemble. As you see, all these people here are really terrific, and I'm proud to say that we are very diverse in our casting. I'm proud to say we're very diverse behind the camera and in the writer's room, and I think that that's going to make our show better.
This would not have happened 90 years ago. So let's talk about that, because you are dealing with, I mean, Nancy Drew is obviously the banner name, but like George, Ned, these characters are people that we all know. We remember from the various iterations that we, came up with. How did you put this together? Like, when you're filling Nancy Drew, how many redheaded actresses did you see?
I mean,
A lot, but there was only one.
I was yeah, we chose the blonde.
Right. So,
A lot.
Like, that's, I mean, what are you looking for when you're looking like, we need a Nancy Drew? What does she have to bring to the screen?
Well, one of the things, Kennedy has many talents and charms, but one of the things that we first responded to in her audition tape before we even met her in person was her confidence and her intelligence. And that of all the girls that we saw, Kennedy was the smart one. She was the one that felt like she knew what she was talking about, she could stand up to adults, she listened when people were talking, you felt like she was observant, and she had that fearless quality, but she also had a vulnerability, which, as we were talking about, is really important to our Nancy, that she's not just this kind of like perfect girl who never has any fear or sense of flaw.
And so let's talk, so the actors, for you guys, what were your auditions like? Did you actually get pages of your characters?
Sure. I had got a text from my agent while I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. And she was like, oh my God, Kennedy, there's a Nancy Drew script, we gotta get you in for it. And I was like, oh my God. And I like had this moment of this cosmic sort of centering, and I looked up at my friends and I was like, guys, I'm gonna be Nancy Drew. And I with totally not a root of like, I'm great and I'm gonna make it happen. It just was like, I must be. And I read, I was a nanny, and when I got the script, I was like, my kids were eating dinner, and I was like, I have to read reading the script, and I'm like reading the script, like hiding in their bedroom while they're eating dinner. Sorry, Michelle. And I was like, this is my voice. This is the way that I think and the way that I speak. And so I ended up going in. I was living in New York, and so I went in for our casting director in New York, and he was awesome. It really worked with me. And then I was just crossing my fingers that that tape would make it to the casting director in LA. And I got a call a couple days later that they were going to fly me out to LA to test for the part. And I was like on my way to my job, and I was riding the subway, and I like put in my headphones and turned on Dancing Queen by ABBA, and I was like, why am I doing it? It's gonna happen. And so yeah, I went to LA, and we tested, and we had the full pilot script at that current iteration to work off of. I think I had like four scenes or something. Yeah, we did a test for the studio for CBS, and then they were like, look, we have to bring you in for a work session before you go in for the network tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So that night, I went in for a work session with Melinda. You were there. You guys weren't there. No, Josh was there. Yeah, you were busy. Josh was there. Sandy, our casting director, was there, and they were like, we're gonna bring in this girl, Leah, who I had met at the studio test earlier in that day. He was the only person in the room when I walked into the studio test. And I remember when I walked in, you were like, I saw you standing out there, and I was like, that girl looks just like Nancy Drew.
That is very true. Very, very true. I texted everyone I know, like, I think that's Nancy.
Yeah, so they brought you in, and we like did some improv scenes together, and we reworked stuff to get ready for the network test the next day. And we like did a bunch of improv, probably terrible. That's like on tape somewhere of us like standing like this and being like, go wait that table. Like,
Just to banter, and then like, how about like we do like more of a relationship? And like, oh yeah. Get the show together. Like,
In fairness, we were asking you to face forward while improvising, which is not like I'm like, yeah, and like, how are you? But you know what was great in improvising? Alex, when you were auditioning in the callback, we had some chemistry reads between Alex and Maddison, and Alex and the other actress who was up for that part. And there's a scene that unfortunately probably won't make it onto air, but it was. Do you remember the scene, Alex? About the van? Can I walk you to your car?
Oh yeah.
yeah, like, you don't need to walk me. I'll be fine.
I was really trying. I was trying hard. She kept turning me down.
And so when you guys all got together, once you finally cast everybody and had them, did you guys do any kind of like bonding dinner or an escape room? Which I totally want that to be an episode, by the way. We need a Nancy Drew escape room episode.
we got Thai food.
We did
We
get
all got in.
I mean,
Yeah, I feel like we
all
had kind of become friends because of the casting process.
Yes, very much.
Because that day we like rode home in a lift together, and we're like, listen.
We already did that together.
I know.
I'm like, I feel like we're friends. What if we don't book this job? Are we still gonna be friends after?
Like, yes. We're booking this job.
We have to.
Yeah, we got some Thai food. And we all chatted.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that was
from the beginning, I feel like we did a lot of dinners.
Yeah.
It was very natural. I
We
feel
went
like
to hot yoga.
Yes.
So to his first yoga class. He did great.
Now, one of the first questions I got on Twitter after this panel was announced was that people wanted to know why Horseshoe Bay, not River Heights, which we saw the sign, street sign for River Heights. Were we worried that people would think it was Riverdale?
We were a little worried about that. For a minute we were thinking about Bayport, because that's also part of the canon with Nancy Drew. But in the end, we found this town, Horseshoe Bay, in Vancouver, and we all fell in love with it. Yes! The art department was like, if we go with Horseshoe Bay, we wanted to change it into something. Yes! And that's important when you're making a TV show, so it all made sense.
And now it has been announced you have Pamela Sue Martin on board to come in. What can you guys talk about, and how was meeting the other Nancy Drew?
It was amazing. She is the most kind-hearted woman. She walked into the hair and makeup trailer on the day that she was shooting, and she was like, Kennedy, I wrote you this letter. And I was like, what? And she handed me this like 4-page, beautifully handwritten letter that I like walked into my trailer and read and cried, and it was beautiful. She's just been, and she's reached out to me so many times after. She's like, if you're ever around my part of the world, come stay with me. She's the most lovely, lovely lady.
That's awesome. Okay, so in the pilot, which you guys just watched, we learned a little bit about these people, and in the final moments, we learned a lot about these people. And they're not all great people, by the way. Like, again, like back in the old books, everyone was like, hey, gee, really? You know, like, meanwhile, now we're doing like late night booty calls, or let's go down, tell us what are we going to find out about your characters going forward, and what have you found out that really surprised you?
Without giving anything
Yes.
away.
It's really hard to do. I don't know, Ace is sort of an outsider, but he's trying to help solve his case. He's the only one with an alibi. So we'll see how he can use that to his advantage.
I mean, best lives in a man. So, yeah, and she has the ring, so she needs to get out of that. So I guess that's why she's got that. She's like, gonna sell that somewhere.
For George, I feel like, as you guys know, and like what you saw, she's this very tough character, but I think the surprise ending with the booty call, I think you're going to see a softer side of George and start to see her open up in a way that you wouldn't normally, because she is this really tough chick. And same with her and Nancy. I mean, now that they're involved in this murder, they might actually have to work together to do some things, you know?
Nancy doesn't have any secrets.
I think with Ned, we've changed him quite a bit, right? From the books, he's a completely different guy, which is exciting, and I'm glad to be part of that. I hope I can do that proud. Making those bold choices, he has his criminal past now, and he's got a lot of skeletons in his closet, and now he's called Nick.
Letters, which we always mess up, and I call him Ned.
So for the producers, you have one of our greatest mystery solvers, because she's a detective, but she doesn't have the badge. How do you kind of approach this character and make her smart and really intuitive and all that, but miss certain red flags about the men she just got with?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the opportunities in the episodes right after the pilot is for her to catch up to the audience. We certainly don't want Nancy to be behind the audience for too long, even for dramatic effect. But also, she has certain blind spots. When she really cares about somebody, she doesn't necessarily look as deeply into their suspicious aspects. And when she's very angry at somebody, for instance with her father, she might not be as willing to see his side of the story. So we just play up that humanity and the relatability of the kind of mistakes that everybody makes.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up the father. We are used to Carson Drew being like, the sage wisdom and with the pipe and the sweater vest. He might not be that good of a guy either, it turns out. Is anyone trustworthy in this town?
No. Everyone has secrets, but, everyone in this audience has a secret that I'm sure they're not telling anyone about. And what happens if Nancy Drew walks into your life and starts poking into your stuff? You don't want that. So I think it's just part of being human.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about this really being the origin story of this group. One of Literary's first Scooby gangs. Let's hear from the actors about what is it like getting to play, because you guys all get along and have fun, but you have to play these characters who do not all the time. Like, everyone's shady, everyone's got a resentment, everyone's got some kind of, secret. What is it like for you guys to get to play these characters and know they're headed to becoming friends?
I remember really early on, with the three of us especially, Larry, our director of the pilot and one of our producers, he was like, hey guys, you like each other too much, so we're gonna have to rein that back in. Because we were like, this is so fun, we'll all be friends. And so, because we really like each other a lot in real life. And, so it was kind of funny to be really intentional about
I mean, also, the more that we got to know our characters too, I feel like the more easy it was to play into those dislikes and likes that we have towards each other.
But hopefully that roots everything, right? No friendship's perfect. No friendship is just squeaky clean.
Exactly.
You've got your ups and downs and your history. Nancy and George definitely have history. So it's great to have that to enrich it, to give it layers and levels, to make it more interesting, and everyone's a bit more rounded. Right?
Like everyone works really hard for the friendship
And what kind of pairings could we, I mean, obviously we've got a ship going on right there. Have you picked your hashtag name?
Nixie? What's that?
Betsy? Because otherwise it's a name, which is...
No.
No?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. But like, what kind of pairings will we see these characters together? Because most of it is, we've seen them all working together in one thing, but since they are from the same town, what kind of intersections are we looking at?
Well, that's part of the fun of writing an ensemble show, is that you get to write all kinds of pairings. And you can find, especially in a small town where people have known each other for a long time, really interesting ways to pair people up and have them shared interests or conflicts that you didn't realize were there that are coming to the surface. So it's really fun. There's no limits to the different pairings.
Yeah, I would say that Ace and Bess, from that long lost scene where he wanted to walk into with her car, there definitely is an evolution of that, and we'll see more of them together. We'll see Ace and Nick pair up sometimes. We'll see a lot of George, Nancy sparks, and Bess has her own secret, which is a way to bond with Nancy when Nancy eventually figures it out.
Okay, so that will be something that isn't going to be, you're not going to be sitting on that for too long.
No.
I feel bad about her living situation. It does not seem
That's
comfortable.
not great,
Yeah.
is it?
But
But she still manages to look pretty lovely.
well, I'm
I say
assuming
so.
that she's a giant thief.
Yeah.
That's how she's getting all these people.
Yeah, the woman's dead, remember?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
pretty bad.
And then we don't know if she took the ring before she died or not. Yeah. Okay, so, and this is because it's, TV has gotten to a point where literally any one of these people could be the murderer. Like,
Melinda.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be like a shady dad or like some guy they discover in like a dumpster or something. It could be, like, we've seen shows take their lead character and be like, oh yeah, by the way, they're actually the killer. Have you guys started mapping out who it could be? And which one of you wants to be the killer?
Me.
Zero hesitation.
I think we've all tried to piece things together without giving away the plot to each other, because I know all of us know little things about our characters that we try not to tell each other, and we don't, and we do at the same time. But I feel like Ace could be the killer.
I am the killer.
Gotta throw you off.
Well, like you set it up, everybody has a motive, but it could be somebody not at this table, right? Okay, so you've got the supernatural thing, and again, a lot of people were like, oh, is it going to be kind of like Scooby-Doo, where like they think the mansion's haunted, but it's, you little kids, and they pull off a mask. But you guys are seriously like, this town has some ghosts.
Yes.
Yeah. And how much will we get to learn about these ghosts when they started, why they're hanging out?
I'm glad you asked that. There's a lot. There's a lot going on in the town. The town itself is based on it's based on a town in Southwest Harbor, Maine, that part of, Acadia National Park. I used to work as a waitress there in the summer times. But that part of the coast has a lot of seafaring lore, and the reason that we decided to go with Horseshoe Bay, among the other signage, was helpful, but we figured there was a shipwreck that started this town, and that there was a lady who got thrown overboard as a stowaway, and they tied horseshoes to her to sink her to the bottom of the sea, and she still haunts the harbor. There are a lot of kind of legends that will start to surface during the season, and we will find that there's definitely a reason that this particular town is kind of a vortex for all of these supernatural events.
Yep.
And the plan is to not introduce like demigorgons or
No.
No vampires.
right, be like Nancy's gone, she's in the upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna stick with just like the creepy stuff. Like,
Yeah, supernatural.
all right. So, and for the actors, we were talking earlier also, because you get the supernatural thing, that means a lot of night shoots. Because nothing creepy happens during the day, like only at night. Have you guys prepared yourselves for some very weird hours?
I mean,
Kinda.
it gets weird. When you I don't know, you just kind of lose, maybe it's just me, I kind of lose some motor skills. As we were going through I had 4 days in a row where I just kept falling everywhere I was. It's 4:30 in the morning, and it's we're running through the rain in the woods, and grab this, and do this, and we're running, and it's and it just fell out of frame every single time. But yeah, it just gets kind of
lot of thermals.
A lot of loopy jokes.
And warmers and thermals.
Yeah.
And when you guys all booked the show, did anyone gift you copies of Nancy Drew books?
Yeah. Yeah. My boyfriend got me The Secret of the Old Clock and a couple other things, and I was pretty excited. That's so sweet. I think we all got some gifts, yeah. Yeah. Scott, actually. Scott Wolf, who plays Carson Drew, his wife got sent this whole box of old Nancy Drew books that a client of hers had found. And they got them, and he was looking through them, and he opened, the first one he took out and opened up, said, "This book belongs to Kennedy." Like somebody had written that in. And obviously not me, but it was so, it was Kennedy B. So Kennedy B, if you're out there, we've got your book. But Scott gifted it, which was very, very sweet.
Nice. So let's talk about some Easter eggs, because we saw a couple here. Who's kind of like in charge of, oh, we can do that here, or I want to make sure that we mention this?
Well, the writer's room, but we have a really great research intern, thank you Sarah, who goes through all the books anytime we need an Easter egg. But also there's a lot of people in the writer's room who are Nancy Drew fans, and so they're like waiting in the wings with these things that they really want to put in the show.
And also our art department and our costume designer, everyone was really into it. Like at the very end, you see Nancy in her pajamas that are red with the white piping and echo one of her book covers. And when she's opening up the trunk, we tried to have some of the same things. Again, like spinning wheel and like the things that are from the iconic book covers. The girls' uniforms in the claw are based on iconic outfits that they wore on book covers in terms of the colors. And our production designer, Mark White, you haven't seen really much of Nancy's room yet, but you will. And he's making the wallpaper the same like textures that Nancy Drew covers. Like people are really into it. We used the original Nancy Drew board game to get like the color palette for the show. It's like a lot of deep thinking.
That is, and because that's what I remember most about those books were like the spines of the books. Like the Hardy Boys were blue and Nancy Drew was yellow, and you knew exactly which section of the library to go to. And since I just mentioned them, any chance of the Hardy Boys just like driving through town? You're like, hey!
We shall see.
So for the actors, because it's a modernized version of a very old property, what did you guys think when you first read this script?
I think it's fantastic because, I mean, as you said, Nancy Drew's been around for what? Since the 1930s. And one of the strengths of Nancy Drew, I think, is it evolves with its time. That's why it's hung around for so long. Otherwise, people have forgotten about it, it become irrelevant. And what was fantastic about this script was that it was fearless, but respectful to the original source material, but fearless and bold in exploring, okay, what does 2019 Nancy Drew look like? And that's how you end up with this cast, and that's how you end up with work behind the camera as well, encouraging diversity within that. So it's very 2019 and very unapologetic about it. That's fantastic.
What about you guys? When you saw these scripts and you saw these characters, what did you think of, oh, this is actually a very relevant character? Yeah.
Me. Well, when I first read the script, I remember reading those books and thinking everything was really mystery-based and everything. It wasn't really so much about the characters. So when I did the script, I was actually shocked at how deep these characters were and how many things were at stake for them and how sketchy they were. I love mystery, and I remember at the end of the script not expecting this, being like, oh, and I'm never like that. I'm not really surprised all that much. But after reading this, what really drew me in was how much I wanted to know more about them. And how interesting they were in such weird and eerie little ways,
We talked a little bit about what the characters are, heading towards, but what's the most fun part of playing your character?
I had to drive a very big truck. On the wrong side of the road because I'm British, so it's automatic, so I'm fine. But yeah, that truck roars, right?
Oh yeah, it does.
It's awesome.
It's like a lot of when we start driving, it's like,
It's the most manly thing in my life.
revving up your big old truck. I just like sneaking around. I love like living out these sneaky like break-in. It's so fun. It's super fun. Yeah.
I'd say for George, I like how snarky she is. I mean, I feel like we all don't get to be like that in real life. So when George kind of just like jabs at people, it's kind of fun. I mean, just knowing it's not real life, I guess. And it is fun playing out that mystery. And it's cool knowing that you know what's going on and no one else really does.
Yeah, I think for Bess, even though she looks so prim and proper and she has the Chanel flats and her life looks so put together, it's going to be amazing as the season goes on to see that she's dealing with an identity crisis, not knowing who she might be, who her friends are, trying to make friends. So even though she comes across all of herself, she is like, you know, wanting to just fit in and figure this tricky life out that everyone goes through. So yeah.
Your clothes are pretty fantastic as well.
Yeah.
You do have like really fun.
Yeah. They're really beautiful, and the costume teams have been unbelievable in translating that. So yeah.
No, I think Ace is included so much, but he wants to play. Put me in coach. To be there with everybody. So,
You get to do a lot of improv too.
Say it again?
So you get to do quite a bit of improv. Alex is really funny, guys.
That's a lot of flavors.
Yeah.
I also feel like Ace is the one who needs a hug the most.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like the whole town is kind of like come down on him, and it's like he needs to be understood.
Me and Ace both.
Alex.
All right, well I just got this stop sign, so I'm going to stop after this question. Any books that you plan on fully just taking the mystery from to play with?
No.
No.
Yeah, everyone will be twisted, where you might see a prop from something that comes from a book or a character, but it's going to be inverted and reinvented. Yes.
All right, well that's it. Inverted and reinvented and awesome. So congratulations to the cast and crew.